Hi students, today we're going to read My Father's Dragon, Chapter 10. My Father Finds the Dragon. As I said last time, this is the very final chapter of My Father's Dragon. Here's our reading objective. You can go ahead and repeat after me. We will discuss the structure of a multi-chapter story and determine the best way to retell it. So there are three ways that we can retell a story. One is we can list the beginning, middle, and the end. Two, we can talk about the characters, setting, problem, and solution. And three, we can talk about a summary going chapter by chapter. Okay? So as we are reading, we're going to think about the following question. How am I going to choose to retell the story of My Father's Dragon to someone who has not read the book? All right? Before we get started, I want to go over some vocabulary. The first word that I want to go over is the word irate. When someone is irate, it means they're really angry. You can tell that here through the fact that this lady's face has turned red. Okay? The other word that we can look at is stampeded. I use an example from The Lion King here. If you've seen that movie when all of the hyenas start to come and they are chasing Simba, that's the same thing that's going to happen here. Okay, the animals are going to stampede Elmer. All right, and the last thing is the jackknife, right? Elmer is going to be cutting a rope with a jackknife, and I wanted to give you an example of what that looks like. All right, let's go ahead and get started with reading the story. Chapter 10. My Father Finds the Dragon. When my father was crossing the back of the 15th crocodile with 2 more lollipops to go, the noise of the monkeys suddenly stopped, and he could hear a much bigger noise getting louder every second. Then he could see the 7 furious tigers and 1 raging rhinoceros and 2 seething lions and 1 ranting gorilla, along with countless screeching monkeys, led by 2 extremely irate, there's that word, wild boars, all yelling, "It's a trick! It's a trick! There's an invasion and it must be after our dragon! Kill it! Kill it!" The whole crowd stampeded down to the bank. As my father was fixing the 17th lollipop for the last crocodile, he heard a wild boar scream. "Look! It came this way! It's over there now, see? The crocodiles made a bridge for it." And just as my father leapt onto the other bank, one of the wild boars jumped onto the back of the first crocodile. My father didn't have a moment to spare. So when they're talking about the bank, students, they're not talking about a bank where you put your money. They're talking about the river bank. So the river bank, you can picture the sides of where the land is, okay? By now, the dragon realized that my father was coming to rescue him. He ran out of the bushes and jumped up and down, yelling, "Here I am! I'm right here! Can you see me? Hurry! The boar is coming over on the crocodiles too! They're all coming over! Oh, please, hurry! Hurry!" The noise was simply terrific. My father ran up to the dragon and took out his very sharp jackknife. "Steady, old boy, steady! We'll make it. Just stand still," he told the dragon as he began to saw through the big rope. By this time, both boars, all 7 tigers, and the 2 lions, the rhinoceros, and the gorilla, along with countless screeching monkeys, were all on their way across the crocodiles, and there was still a lot of rope to cut through. "Oh, hurry!" the dragon kept saying, and my father again told him to stand still. "If I don't think I can make it," said my father, "we'll fly over to the other side of the river, and I can finish cutting the rope there." Suddenly, the screaming grew louder and madder, and my father thought the animals must have crossed the river. He looked around and saw something which surprised and delighted him. partly because he had finished his lollipop, and partly because, as I told you before, crocodiles are very moody and not the least bit dependable and are always looking for something to eat. The first crocodile had turned away from the bank and started swimming down the river. The second crocodile hadn't finished yet, so he followed right after the first, still sucking his lollipop. All the rest did the same thing, one right after the other, until they were all swimming away in a line. The 2 wild boars, the 7 tigers, the rhinoceros, the 2 lions, the gorilla, along with countless screeching monkeys, were all riding down the middle of the river on the train of crocodiles, sucking pink lollipops, and all yelling and screaming and getting their feet wet. So here's the picture of them all crossing the crocodiles, and then you can picture they're done with their lollipops now, so all of the crocodiles are going to start to go away, and all of these animals are going to end up in the water. That's what just happened. My father and the dragon laughed themselves weak because it was such a silly sight. As soon as they had recovered, my father finished cutting the rope, and the dragon raced around in circles and tried to turn a somersault. He was the most excited baby dragon that ever lived. My father was in a hurry to fly away, and when the dragon finally calmed down a bit, my father climbed up on his back. "All aboard," said the dragon. "Where shall we go?" "We'll spend the night on the beach, and tomorrow we'll start the long journey home. So it's off to the shores of Tangerina," shouted my father, as the dragon soared above the dark jungle and the muddy river, and all the animals bellowing at them and the crocodiles, licking pink lollipops and grinning wide grins. After all, what did the crocodiles care about a way to cross the river? And what a fine feast they were carrying on their backs. As my father and the dragon passed over the ocean rocks, they heard a tiny, excited voice scream, "Bumkak! Bumkak! We dweed our dwagon! We need our dragon!" They're trying to say, come back, we need our dragon." But my father and the dragon knew that nothing in the world would ever make them go back to Wild Island. The end. We made it, students. It's one of my favorite stories. I'm so happy. Okay, so before we started reading, I told you there were 3 ways to retell a story: the beginning, middle, end, sharing the problem setting, characters, and solution, and going over it chapter by chapter. So we thought about the question, how am I going to choose to retell the story of my father's dragon to someone who has not read the book? Okay, so number 3, we've really already done that. You've written a summary down for each chapter. So one option you could have to retell it to someone would be to go through those sticky notes in order to tell them the story, right? Here are other 2 ways that you can do it, all right? We're going to look at the beginning, middle, end first, okay? Before we do this, I want you to try and brainstorm how you would summarize the beginning, middle, and end of the story. You can take out a piece of paper or a post-it note. You can pause the video and write this down and unpause when you're ready to see my summary of the beginning, middle, and end. Okay? So if we're trying to retell my father's dragon, here's what I would say. At the beginning, Elmer met a cat that told him about Wild Island and the dragon that was there. In the middle, Elmer went on an adventure to Wild Island to capture the dragon. He had to trick wild boars, a rhinoceros, a lion, a gorilla, monkeys, tigers, and crocodiles to finally get to the dragon. At the end, Elmer rescued the dragon and flew away from Wild Island. So that whole thing is a retell of the story. If you told someone that, they would get the idea of what my father's dragon is about. It didn't go through every single little detail, but it gave your listener an idea of what you read, okay? All right, now I want you to do the same thing here. I want you to pause this video and I want you to write down who the characters were, what the setting was, what the problem was, and what the solution was. Once you're done with that, unpause and see how I put those things together to give a similar but different type of retell of this story. Here we go. The characters were Elmer, Elmer's mother, the cat, the dragon, and all of the animals on Wild Island. The setting was Elmer's house, the island of Tangerina, and Wild Island. The problem was the animals of Wild Island were holding the dragon captive, and Elmer needed to rescue it. The solution was Elmer used the materials the cat had him pack in his backpack to get away from the animals that were in his way of the dragon. Then he was able to rescue the dragon. Okay, so what we did here is we looked at, these are two specific ways. We already have the third one done from our chapter summaries. Okay, so we looked at 3 different ways that we can retell a story. All right. So you can think of these ways when you're retelling a story to a family member, a friend, a sibling, okay? And you can either retell a story by sharing the beginning, middle, end, by sharing the problems, setting, character, and solution, or by going through it chapter by chapter. Okay, students? I'm so happy that we were able to read My Father's Dragon together. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I look forward to reading more stories with you after spring break. Bye, students.